morning and welcome back to the lecture series on refugee migration diaspora. So today we are going to continue with our discussion on Sunil Ganguly's East West. I was talking about the refugee crisis and the journey of the refugee into becoming a citizen. So Meenakshi Mukherjee states in her essay Maps and Mirrors on Amitabh Ghosh's Shadow Lines, the Hindu-Muslim divide is created at the same time as it is rubbed away. And the people and situations across the border seem not very different, but only like a looking glass reflection on both sides of the border, right? So the people, the culture, the habits are so similar on both sides of the border, and this is true both in the case of Punjab and Bengal. We see that the Punjabi culture that reigns over and above the communal differences, the religious differences on the western side, and similarly the Bengali culture that overrules any kind of religious difference is strikingly similar. It's almost like a mirror reflection, and one wonders why the country was a partition in the first place if the cultures, the linguistic and day-to-day living habits are so similar. So displacement followed by the partition and its impact on the common people, the human cost of partition, the human crisis during and after the partition becomes clear from a particular scene from East and West, where the character of Biman tells the protagonist Pratap that a particular banker is his countryman. So this is also a very common identification that the migrants have time and again made with their fellow countrymen. So if there is a fellow East Bengali, a fellow Bengali from the Eastern Bengal who has migrated and who has experienced similar crisis in the past, there is an immediate connection, there is an immediate identification. So two fellow migrants can connect over their common experience of crisis, over their common experience of jeopardy. And it is from this point of view, it is from this perspective that the character of Biman tells Pratap that this particular banker is from my country. To this remark, Pratap explodes in anger and says, "Wasn't the entire Bengal province your country as well before partition?" So this kind of partisanship, this kind of partisan feelings where one can only feel or sense an affiliation with Eastern Bengal and with fellow migrants is being chastised in a way by Sunil Ganguly. The fact that migration, the experience of migration and a sense of otherness, an experience of being otherized by the host population, to an extent it ghettoizes the immigrant Bengalis, and they also start connecting only in terms of a fellow feeling among the fellow migrant populace. So there is this rift between the us and they, the East Bengalis and the West Bengalis. So this is a person from my country versus the other person is from the host land, that kind of a feeling. And Pratap is actually chastising, reprimanding this sort of a ghettoized feeling, saying that a few days back, only some time back, the entire Bengali, the entire Bengal province would be one's country. So how has it now become us versus they? So the novel raises a number of pertinent questions. How could people who have known each other for such a long time turn into enemies overnight? Does anyone ever leave his ancestral land out of choice? In the later part of the novel, Sunil Ganguly quotes a poem by Rabindranath Tagore that very poignantly sets forth the essentially united nature of the Bengali identity. So this poem by Tagore establishes the essentially united nature of the Bengali identity. I quote from the poem, "This land of Bharat does not belong only to you or only to me. The shadow of the Hindu hovers over it, as does the presence of the Muslims." Unquote. In the entire narrative, river Padma becomes an important symbol. It becomes a quintessential symbol, simultaneously working as a divider and connector of two Bengals and two types of Bengaliness. In the case of East-West, the treatment of the women section also becomes poignant because the atmosphere is consistently masculine. It's a very hyper-masculine, situation where in a new land, essentially the male kin in a family, the male folks from a family are decision makers. They make the way for everyone, they decide for everyone, whereas women have to always take the back seat. In some instances, we see there is a subversion of this gendered role where women also come out, take up jobs, and so they are breaking the barriers. But however, we see that those women who manage to step out of the social confines, which are defined in terms of gender, are regarded as extraordinary. So we see that women who take up jobs, who are working, who are in the public domain, are regarded as out of the ordinary. They are seen as anomalies in a scenario which is otherwise driven by, motivated by essentially patriarchal values. So, the girls portrayed in the novel are neglected in their family. They are frequently neglected in their family. Beautiful girls like the character of Tutul face suffering and persecution for their beauty, and in extreme cases like those of the refugee women, these girls are raped and they are left to fill up the ranks of the lunatic women or the so-called fallen women. Also, one sees that the role of the women remains confined to their homes and they are mainly serving their husbands. They are depicted as weak and yet scheming individuals, and their primary functions lies in supporting their male relatives. So, in this regard, Uditi Sen makes a very important intervention, pointing out how the collective anxiety of the refugee male had resulted in stereotyping the refugee female in terms of certain very strong, very archaic patriarchal yardsticks. The women would be, categorized as either the pioneer, who were the first female job holders in the public domain, or they would be seen as or through the lens of the archetype of a spinster, a woman that never married and only supported their family, the figure of the martyr, the kind we see in Hrithik Ghatuk's film Meghi Dhaka Tara, the protagonist Neeta, who never gets married, who is supporting her family financially. Or there would be yet another stereotype, the worst of the three stereotypes, which is the fallen woman, the prostitute. So, the male anxiety would define women through certain very pigeonholed stereotypes, through certain very narrow stereotypes of either being a pioneer or a prostitute or a spinster, right? So, the woman would be curbed, would be kind of burdened through these stereotypes that were created by the patriarchal society. Sunil Ganguly's East-West is also considered as a crucial work of diaspora studies. Through using the theoretical tenets of memory studies and trauma studies in the novel, scholar Abhishek Parui has suggested this theoretical framework can be crucial in its examination of the movement of humans across spaces in the novel East-West, and he examines how such movements connect political and existential experiences of displacement, nostalgia and alienation. So, East-West is essentially a tale of many families, chiefly the members of the Zamindar Majumdar family from East Pakistan, who move to Calcutta and who experience a series of loss and existential changes. East West also portrays a set of semi fictional characters, historical figures, and political events which reflect the rapid geopolitical changes in South Asia and Southeast Asia post 1947. In fictionalizing the events of partition, Bangladesh war, and also mentioning the Naxalbari movement through complex depictions of political figures such as Jawaharlal Nehru, M.A. Jinnah, Ayub Khan, Indira Gandhi, Charu Majumdar, and Jyoti Basu, East West emerges as a story of unsettled and interrupted identities whose interruptions are an index of political and existential changes and remappings. So, East West is trying to capture these existential changes, these trajectories of remappings. Sunil Ganguly's position as a diaspora author is layered and complex. It is nuanced and complex, especially in relation to the other Bengali diaspora authors who are writing in English, such as Amitav Ghosh and Jhumpa Lahiri, whose works share a significant thematic overlap with East West. The 1947 India Pakistan partition, as well as the 1971 Pakistan Bangladesh partition, which informed the characters' lives and metamorphosis in Ghosh's shadow lines. To an extent, they also come back in Jhumpa Lahiri. All these historical events, historical junctures feature in a major way in East West. The 1967 Naxalite movement in West Bengal that produced a diaspora out of young ideologically ultra-left Bengali men shifting to the USA in order to escape encounters with the Calcutta police, and which forms a major political event also in Jhumpa Lahiri's Lowland, published in 2013, deeply informs the later part of Ganguly's novel. So, the chapter of Naxalbari movement, which finds its mention in Lahiri's Lowland, has been explored substantially in Ganguly's novel. Regarding Ganguly's East West, Lewis Harrington suggests, I quote the scholar and critic here, this novel emerges as a complex narrative of the ontology and alienation of diasporic experience in different geopolitical settings, unquote. So, East West is an intergenerational fiction about diasporic alienation written by a writer who was born in Bangladesh and who moved to India eventually, retaining the Bengali language while changing the national identity after partition. East West also portrays how diasporic alienation can be experienced within what is notionally one nation state, such as East Bengal or East Pakistan, which houses different cultural and linguistic landscapes. During the partition, what happens is that this different cultural and linguistic landscapes are not able to accommodate one another. A section of the East Bengali populace, which is the Hindu Bengalis, were considered as minorities who were staying on the wrong side of the border. So, suddenly it became during the partition, it emerged as a fact during the partition that the Hindu Bengali section who became minorities were staying on the wrong side of the border, and so it was suggested that they should join their co-religionists on the other side of the border, and so they should become part of West Bengal, right? In this regard, Abhishek Parui suggests that the novel dramatizes how the formation of a new nation of Pakistan in 1947 also produces existential alienation akin to diasporic sentiments. Such alienation of the refugees is very much similar to diasporic sentiments even within the notionally same nation state. Referring to East Pakistan, which was culturally very close to West Bengal in India and which subsequently became Bangladesh in 1971. So, we see that so much of complexities arise as an aftermath of this partition. The entire South Asia's, history, its future, the further ramifications are entirely hinged on the watershed of partition. So, alongside the usual travel to and subsequently a sense of alienation in the West or in the West Bengal, which forms the later part of the novel titled Paschim. East West also depicts how the city of Calcutta can contain subjects of the same culture and language belonging to different national and political registers. So, how the Bengalis can further, identify with different national and political registers depending on whether they are originally or whether they are native West Bengalis or they have migrated from Bangladesh. So, through these different registers, Ganguly's novel depicts how diasporic identities are produced, how these identities are formed and experienced through shadow lines of layers of memories and imaginations rather than through neat geopolitical divisions. So, partition is not an end to itself, it is actually it unfolds new ramified meanings, new crises, new human interfaces and relations. Ironically, undercutting the apparent simplicity of the novel's title, East West, quite contrary to this title, East West, the geographical binaries of East and West emerge less as zonal categories and more as existential markers in the novel. And these two markers, the East and the West, the cultural burdens that each carry, are mutable and not always diametrically oppositional in nature and not always inimical to one another. Diaspora in Ganguly's novel is a complex experiential phenomenon which connects the cities of Dhaka, Calcutta, London, New Jersey and Boston through common human experiences, emotions and sentiments. So, home as an effective category emerges as a shifting state of being, with the novel's climactic part dramatizing the father-son dynamic through the depiction and symbolic juxtaposition of the liminal space of an American hotel where the character of Atin is trapped, which is almost compared to a transcendental nostalgic fantasy of return which is experienced by the dying Pratap in a Calcutta nursing home. So, on the one hand, Atin is, trapped in an American hotel. He is in a liminal space in an American hotel. On the other, we have the transcendental nostalgic fantasy of return that the dying Pratap is experiencing in a Calcutta nursing home. Quoting Soren Frank, Abhishek Parui comments that East West, through its several stories about migration and memories across borders, shares its narrative frame with some of the major works of 20th century world literature, where the main protagonist is a migrant, a figure that is not viewed as an anomaly in a global culture, where migration has actually become the norm and has resulted in a profound renegotiation of the concepts of identity, belonging and home. So, applying the tenets of memory studies in Sunil Ganguly's East West, Monica Rafe Huesler argues that the genre of multi-generational family novels such as Purva Paschim, to quote her, illustrates the impact of politics on personal relations and the effects of state violence on social structures in a way that makes a problematic history accessible and comprehensible to the reader. Unquote. East West's complexity as a novel about migration and diaspora experience emerges from its different depictions of the same city space of Calcutta from the point of view of the same subject at different points in historical time. This is most immediately exemplified by the character of Mamun. Mamun, who is a former member and editor of the Dhaka Muslim League and a friend of Pratap Majumdar from Malkanagar in Bangladesh. So we see that Mamun is arriving at Calcutta with his two daughters after the 1971 Pakistan war, and there is a reminiscence of the times when he had studied in a Calcutta college during his graduation days decades ago. So visiting Calcutta now versus visiting Calcutta or staying in Calcutta at a different historical juncture, at a different point of time in history. That kind of a comparison is presented again and again in the novel. In its many movements across borders, airports, and political circles, the novel East West therefore depicts the entanglement of ideology and intimacy, of experientiality and identity in public and private spaces through its many memories and migration narratives. So, I would like to end our lecture here today, and let's meet in our next lecture with another round of discussions on another topic. Thank you.